Hey everyone, my name is Catalyst, welcome back to the channel. I hope you all are doing well. Today's video is going to be the promised movement guide for Battlefield 2042. We're going to go over each type of movement that you can do in the game, both basic and advanced, and how to chain them all together to outplay your opponents. Some things we have briefly touched upon in other videos, other things you may have noticed in my gameplays over time, but I'm going to try and get everything in one concise video today. The movement in Battlefield 2042 isn't too complicated, which is good, but it's still more than Battlefield fans are used to, so a lot of this video is going to be some interesting facts to know and some small movement tips. So if you're ready, I'm ready, let's get to work. The first thing I would like to cover today is the movement speed between specialists. By now you all probably know that McKay's passive trait allows him to have faster strafe speed and movement speed, but just how fast is that movement speed compared to other specialists? On the left you'll see me strafing back and forth using McKay, and on the right you'll see me doing it as Sundance, and the results are actually quite shocking. I did not expect the strafe speed difference to be quite as high as it was. I mean, you can see that McKay has almost completed a full rotation aiming at the top of this boat on no sharp before Sundance has even made it to one side, so McKay does get an extreme advantage in strafe speed, and it's not even close. Some other things that I wanted to test: what is the movement speed difference between running and tack sprinting? How much of an advantage does tack sprinting actually give you over just regular running, and is it worth the penalty you get in ADS speed? Well, here's what I found, and strap yourselves in because some of these results are kind of shocking. From left to right, you will see me walking, running, and then tack sprinting with McKay. As you probably could have guessed, walking with McKay was pretty slow, but between running and tack sprinting, there isn't as much of a gap as you would think it would be. In this short distance test, the disparity was about a half a second between running and sprinting, which isn't a whole lot obviously, but in a long distance sprint this value would increase and the disparity would be greater because, you know, physics. You know, the whole is a speeding train going at X velocity and then another train is going at Y velocity, and which one gets there faster and how much distance. You know, when they said I would use physics in my adult life, I didn't think this is where it would be applied to, but anyways, with this knowledge in mind, I also wanted to test how fast the ADS speed was between all three speeds, and these were the results. Again, left to right, we have walking, running, then sprinting, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know if I was just testing things incorrectly, but I found there to be zero difference in ADS speed between walking, running, and sprinting. It's all the same. It's just the animation for sprinting is different. And this was kind of shocking to me because I was expecting that if you ADS'd out of a tactical sprint that there would be some kind of time delay. And I did want to add one more variable to this test, and that is ADSing while sliding, and when testing between the tactical sprinting and the sliding while aiming, there was a clear difference in the speed between the two, with the slide being much slower. Now, take this all with a grain of salt, because in testing it's difficult to stop on exactly the same spot, so I matched the clips when you first saw the jerk of the camera indicating that the weapon zoom was beginning, and these are the results that I found, and it appears that there is no penalty for ADSing out of a tactical sprint. Now, we do know that there is spread related to shooting out of a tactical sprint and sliding into a gunfight, but I'm really surprised that there's no speed penalty too. So, some big takeaways here. Number one, the worst thing that you can do entering a gunfight head on is sliding, both in terms of speed penalties and spread penalties. Number two, there is no penalty in ADS speed for tactical sprinting, and tactical sprinting is the fastest form of movement in the game. Number three, running is not as slow in comparison to tactical sprinting as you would think it would be, and is just as viable as tactical sprinting. If you received a heavy speed penalty for ADSing while tack sprinting, I would have said that it's better to just run everywhere, but since there seems to be no downside to tack sprinting at all, apart from increased spread when you engage an enemy coming out of a tactical sprint, there really is no reason to not tactical sprint everywhere. Now, speaking of that slide, here is how the slide functions in Battlefield 2042. The slide as it is now is a directional slide only. You cannot shift directions, while in the slide you can only go forward, and you cannot begin moving left or right again until the animation is complete. What you can do, however, is have full 360 degrees range of motion as it pertains to aiming during the animation, so you can track your target as you slide past them, or quickly whip your mouse around to wherever you need to, especially if you're aiming at somebody behind you while you are sliding. Now, I know we just talked about how sliding in gunfights is probably the statistically worst thing that you can do when you meet an opponent head on, but when you are rounding a corner on an enemy, the slide is actually one of the better mechanics that you can utilize, and I'll explain why here in this example. This applies to when you get surprised by an enemy that is peeking a corner, or you know that you're about to run up on an enemy that is closely hugging the corner. Really, the important thing to note here is that it messes with your opponent's eye level, and they are going to try and track you based on your upper body, but sliding mitigates that, and I found most of the time that they just shoot right over me if I slide around the corner when I see them. The other common result is that I slide past them, they quickly turn to try and find me, and since sliding gives you a range of motion, I either track them and hip fire them on the slide, or I stop and strafe backwards so they overcompensate and miss completely. It's a nice little situational trick, you should try it sometime. Now onto the dreaded and hated bunny hopping. In my pro tips guide, I already talked about bunny hopping a little bit, so this is going to be a brush over more than anything else. You can bunny hop up to 3 times if you have enough speed to do so. After the 3rd hop, your momentum is mostly stopped and you'll just be there jumping like an idiot. I did test whether you can strafe in the air, and you can strafe a little bit, but it's only in one direction, so you can't change directions mid-air. In the pro tips guide, we also discussed what I deemed hop peeking, which is essentially using the bunny hop to cross lanes effectively, while also being able to aim down sight and return fire if need be. McKay has this little unintended quirk of being to bunny hop at longer distances and at an increased speed if you do get the trajectory right, as you can see in the clip here. You cut off your grapple hook at the apex of your ascension, and then you start hopping when you hit the ground. I haven't really found a practical use for this yet. Honestly, it's more of a meme than anything else, and when I tried to do it, I either made it through completely or I got shot midway through, and if you can do it successfully, then good for you, but in most cases, you probably won't find many ways to use it apart from crossing open areas, which there aren't really many ways to grapple through that anyways. It is important to note that you do have increased gun spread when you are jumping, so even though the hit reg and spread is better since the last major update, you still do have penalties for jumping and shooting, so keep that in mind. One of the best combination moves to do on the battlefield is tack sprinting, sliding, jumping, landing, and then crouching in that order. Now, crouch spamming itself, a mechanic as old as time really, I don't find too viable in 2042. It doesn't really manipulate the hitboxes or anything, but what I do find viable personally is a single crouch mid gunfight, which is just enough to throw off your opponent's aim and have them miss you, especially if they're using the recoil to climb into headshots. Now, the most complicated chain of movement that you can do in this game is jump peeking into a slide. Now, in Battlefield 5, if you jumped in any direction with enough momentum and then let go of your left stick or your movement keys, you would do what was called an ice skate, where your momentum from the jump would make you slide on the ground, making you kind of hard to track. And in 2042, you can't do that, but what you can do is immediately slide after landing on a jump. It's pretty tricky to get the timing down because if you miss that window, you'll just start crouching. So you need to time the slide so that your movement from the jump carries you into a sliding animation. This is very technically challenging, even for myself, but if and when you pull this off, it's very difficult to beat you in a gunfight. Some other small things that I thought I should include before the video ends: DICE have taken out the combat roll, so if you jump out of a tall space, your movement will be sandbagged a little bit upon landing. DICE have also talked about adding this feature, but I wouldn't really hold your breath. DICE have taken out the heist vaulting animation, so it's more like a Battlefield 4 style of jumping or vaulting, but you still can vault small to medium-sized obstacles. Dozer has a massive turn cap while using his shield, so if you are taking fire from beside you, turn and then pop the shield instead of popping the shield then turning. Sundance, as we discussed in her specialist guide, has 2 ways of landing. One is a combat roll, the other is a barrel roll that transitions into the slide animation. And that's all there really is to the movement in 2042. There is no slide canceling or advanced movement really. I would describe it really as a watered down version of Modern Warfare 2019's movement system, but with some different quirks. Thank you for watching today's video though. If you liked it or learned something useful, make sure you drop a like on the video and comment down below. It helps me tremendously in the algorithm. If you enjoyed it just that much, consider subscribing, as I make weekly Battlefield 2042 content. I try to stream 4 nights a week on my Twitch, so if you're interested in that, the link in this is in the description below. Once again, thank you so much for watching. My name is Catalyst, and I will see you all another time.